Well, we're in a great place. We're getting ready for a national championship, Georgia and Alabama. And I think that's what a lot of folks expected at the beginning of the season. So we're gonna talk a little bit about this ball game as we meet again. About a month ago, played in the SEC championship, and now we'll meet for all of the marbles on Monday night in Indianapolis, Georgia, and Alabama in the national title at 8 o'clock. And these two guys on the screen with me here, Eric Zier and DJ Shockley, we'll all be together in Indianapolis for the Georgia Bulldogs Sports Network broadcast. So we're all excited about that. We're going to talk a little offense right now. And Alabama guys had a lot more offense than we had in that first meeting in the SEC championship. But, you know, it's a different time. It's a different game. Georgia looked very good in the Orange Bowl. Played outstanding on both sides, offense and defense. Z, we'll start with you. And what are your general thoughts on our offensive play the second go-round against Alabama on Monday night?
I think I'll start just kind of going back to the Michigan game in the Orange Bowl. If Georgia comes out and executes the way that we did against Michigan, we can have success against anybody. I thought the offensive line played great. We didn't find ourselves in that football game, obviously having to play from behind where we got predictable, and that helps Georgia. And honestly, that helps any football team that is out there on the field. But Stetson played great outside of one throw, I think, against Michigan. Stetson played as good as I've seen him play in a long time. So can play at a very high level. And I think for the Dogs going in against Alabama, what hurt us were turnovers. Didn't convert overly well on third down and found ourselves in a position that we were having to play from behind. In order for us to go out and have success on the offensive side of the ball, especially against Alabama, we've got to stay within arm's reach throughout the game. I think you get behind against this Alabama defense, they are good enough to force you to doing some things that you don't want to go do. But the Dogs have got the ability to go run the football against Alabama. We've got the ability to go throw the football against Alabama. The past several times that we've met them, we've had some success. Where we've been hurt is we find ourselves in a position where we get a little bit pressured, make some bad decisions with the football and turn it over. And then all of a sudden we're playing catch up. So if the Dogs can go out and execute the way we did against Michigan, we can play with anybody.
Z, I'll add to that to the point of going back to the SEC championship game. We were up 10-0 in that ball game. We were moving the football. That wasn't an issue. We was able to move the football in that ball game and had a chance to really put our stamp on that ball game. And when I go back to this particular matchup, I think it goes back to any ball game when you talk about the matchups in the ball game. And I think we got to find those matchups. We found them in the Orange Bowl with James Cook. Brock Bowers has been an issue for everybody all year long, matching up to him. And we can find some of those matchups along with some of the things you mentioned about being able to run the football, controlling the clock, not turning it over. All those things in a game like this versus a really good ball club, you must do. Because as soon as you don't do it, we know what happens with Alabama. They take heat of it, and they definitely make you pay. But the matchups in this ball game, I think, are going to be so critical of Todd Monken and his offense. When you have those matchups, we have to hit them. Not every time when you get those matchups and you overthrow a guy or you miss it or you don't go to the right read, we have to be able to create the matchups we won this ball game and take care of the football. But more than that, I think we'll be fine. I mean, we moved the ball in that ball game. We just didn't execute the full game plan. But this is a game that if you're Georgia, you come in feeling really good about it. And I think one thing that's going to help in this ball game is if Georgia changes the tempo. I think there are times where if we go faster than them, it keeps them from being exotic with their blitzes. It keeps them from being able to rotate guys in. When you keep the tempo going, keep it up, and then force them into some stagnant defensive formation back there, we got a chance to do some things.
Shock, I'll add one thing to that too, is that you talk about the mismatch problems that everybody has had against our tight ends this year. Brock Bowers, Darnell Washington. Alabama had problems matching up against those guys as well through the game. I'm really going to be interested to see how we counterpunch, because you know that Alabama is going to come in with a plan to match up better against our tight ends.
Right.
How do we go adjust to that? All of a sudden you take a look at our receiving core. As we've progressed through the season, even last week in the Orange Bowl, we were as healthy as we've been at the wide receiver position. As we see and go in, we need to go test to see Alabama to see if they've answered the challenges that they had against our tight ends. And if they have an answer, guess what that does? That's going to open up some holes on the outside with our receiving core. So how quickly can we adjust there and get George Pickens in the game and get Jermaine Burton in the football game and get these guys, Kearis Jackson, get them fully involved? I think that game of cat and mouse is going to be really interesting to see.
Are you guys concerned at all that Alabama gets into our head when we play them? Did that ever happen when you guys played with a team that somebody just got the best of you so frequently that you were just mentally psyched out by it?
I think going back to my days, the only team that really you thought about it at all was when we played Florida, because we always had issues when we went down to Jacksonville. We would be playing our best football, and then somehow, some way, we would come up and lose that ball game. But knowing what I know about this team, and when I hear Kirby talk after the game, when I hear him talk before the game, psychologically, this team will be prepared and ready to go. I think this team understands and knows that they can beat Alabama. And you turn on the tape, and they're going to say, here are 4 or 5 plays where if we do X, Y, and Z, this doesn't happen. So I think they can turn on the tape and see that the mistakes come from within. It's not something Alabama's doing. It's something that they're doing. So I don't think psychologically it'll be in their head of, oh, this is Alabama. We can't find a way to get by them, because that's, as the old adage, we all know the tape never lies. And when you turn on that tape, you'll see exactly why you can execute at a high level, you can dominate these guys, and you can play to a style that is conducive to winning. So I don't think this would be a psychological thing for Georgia coming into this game.
And I'll echo exactly what DJ's saying. For me as well, and for our teams, Florida was that team that was in our head. And I think Alabama's getting close to that spot where mentally they've got an advantage. If any Georgia team can overcome that and really break that curse, it is this Georgia football team. But in order to do that, we have to answer. Every time that Alabama does something, regardless of what the score is, because we've seen Georgia up in football games against Alabama going back the past 3 or 4 games, go to the national championship game. It was a game that we were up and dominated. And then you take a look at the SEC championship games, and even going back to last year, we were up in football games and have been up in football games. But even at that point, the minute Alabama does something good, you can almost see the wind come out of the sails of this Georgia football team, regardless of what the score is. If Alabama does something positive, we have to go answer. And we need to do that early in the football game. And if we are answering the call when pressed and when challenged, it will begin to mitigate that some. Important for the Dogs to get off to a fast start, and important for us to counterpunch and answer when Alabama does something good, because they will.
How important is our quarterback in this game? How important is it that he plays well and, limits his mistakes?
Yeah, it's important. It's important that everybody plays well. You don't go against, one of the top 2 teams in the country, because these 2 teams are clearly the top 2 teams in the country. We need everybody to play at their highest level. And maybe more importantly than anything, even if you don't have your best game, you have to limit mistakes. And against Alabama, you kind of talk about teams getting into your head. That forces you to press a little bit. And when you press, you make decisions that you'd rather have back. And that's when turnovers occur. And that's when big momentum shifts happen. So Stetson doesn't have to play great. He's got to play at a high level. He doesn't have to have his best game by any stretch of the imagination. But what he does have to do is limit mistakes and not give them extra opportunities.
God, if I say it's on a scale of 10, I would say probably a 12. I think Stetson has to play well. Obviously, Z mentioned it. This is a big-time ball game. And in these ball games, quarterbacks are the difference. I mean, you go back to the SEC championship game, Bryce Young was the difference. And we had a couple turnovers. And that was, a big part of the ball game. Obviously, Stetson can't play defense, so the defense has to play well too. But at the end of the day, if Stetson can put up a performance similar to what he had in the Orange Bowl, it gives Georgia a really good chance, because with all the weapons he has around him, is he's able to distribute that football and not turn it over or distribute the football into those guys' hands, he's got a chance to be great. And he's already talked about it this week, saying, hey, I'm not putting all the pressure on me. I mean, anybody who's, 20 plus years old should not be putting all the pressure on him. He says, I understand this is a big ball game, but at the end of the day, my job is just to get the football out of my hands and prepare the best I can. And I've had a chance to be around Stetson all year this year and watch him pregame, during halftime, this guy wants it. And if you think this guy wants to throw interception or he wants to make mistakes, it's the furthest thing from him. He wants to be the best for those guys around him. And just think about all he's had to go through. I mean, his journey to this point is quite amazing. I mean, they probably have a 30 for 30 for him. Georgia ends up winning his national championship because of his story and what's led him to here. So I guarantee you he will be absolutely prepared for this ball game, doing everything in his possible right to get it done.
Defensively for Georgia, what's it going to take for the Bulldogs to have success on Monday night against Alabama? We go back to that most recent game, the SEC championship, and as you pointed out, Shock, we were up early in that ball game, but after Alabama came back and took the lead, not a lot of right things happened for us, to be honest. Is the line of scrimmage, our defensive control on the line of scrimmage, how important is that against the Alabama offense?
Scott, priority number one, we have to get to Bryce Young. Go into that ball game, we had 0 sacks. That didn't happen all year long. This is a defensive front that has been notorious for getting after every quarterback they played. We saw it in the Orange Bowl. We really gave all their quarterbacks fits throughout the entire ball game. Georgia has to affect Bryce Young in a bunch of different ways, whether it's pressure, whether it's the front four pushing that pocket and forcing him to get off his spot. Now, we know he's been pretty good when he get off his spot too, but we have to affect him. We have to get him to the ground. We have to hit him. I don't think we even hit him often in that ball game, and he was able just to maneuver around and make some plays. But the front absolutely is a key to this ball game simply because of what he can do if you give him time. So I'm expecting this front to have a little chip on their shoulder, because you think about all year long, everybody's talked about Georgia's front seven, and they have been the key to this defense. And if you can go out and you don't have the same performance versus a top team like Alabama, people are not going to say the same things about you. So I think this is a game where the front seven has to say we are elite. We are the team that everybody thought we were, especially in the front seven, to get after an elite offensive line and quarterback. I mean, the previous game before that, we talked about it. Auburn sacked him 7 times. And I don't think Auburn's defensive line is better than our defensive line. So we have to find a way to get to him.
Yeah, so I agree with that. I think controlling the line of scrimmage is going to determine who wins this football game. And you could say that about almost any football game that you go into. To kind of narrow that down some more, I think our primary 4 rushers, right? So the 4 guys that are putting their hand in the ground, they have to dominate. And when we rush, we have to constrict the pocket, right? Bryce Young's not back there at 6'4" or 6'5". One of the things that can be the most disruptive is off of the edge, if you can contain, and then in the middle, you've got to get a massive push just to restrict vision lanes for Bryce Young, and then keep him in the pocket where you can get him. But if you can go apply pressure with 4 or 5 guys through a variety of different looks, that just doesn't mean you're rushing the same 4 or 5 guys. You can bring safety pressure and still play zone behind it with the kind of athletes that we have, because I think it's also important that we protect our secondary some. We saw a secondary that got beat a number of times in the SEC championship game. We're going to have to provide some protection on the outside against the elite speed that Alabama brings into this football game. So in order to do that, the 4 or 5 guys we have rushing, those 4 or 5 guys, they've got to contain, they've got to get great push, and they've got to be disruptive. If we have to line up and go 0 against this team, unlike Alabama or unlike Michigan, where we had better athletes on the outside, we're going to have our hands full there. We've got to be able to apply pressure and dominate the game with bringing 4 or 5 people through a variety of different looks.
And that's kind of where I wanted to go next. The Heisman Trophy winner goes for 421 against us in the SEC championship game. Why was that? Was it because of our secondary? Because of one-on-one matchups? Was it because we didn't get pressure on the quarterback? Combination of all of that, I would imagine, right?
Yeah, combination of all of it. We weren't able to apply pressure. We allowed him, even when we did get a little bit of pressure and forced him out, there were clear lanes for him to run in. So he was able to step up into the pocket, get outside where his athleticism could take over. And then we had busted assignments in the secondary, or just situations where we didn't play as well as we needed to. So a little combination of all of that. And again, what can stop that quicker than anything is if you get into the head of an opposing quarterback, you get them flustered, you cut down their vision lanes, and you put them on their back a couple of times, the speed of the game changes, and then your performance is going to change as a quarterback, which is why it's so important that we find success and find ways to be disruptive with our pass rush.
Yeah, I totally agree with what Z mentioned. I mean, it's spot on. I mean, everything works hand in hand, especially on this defense. The front works with the back end works with the front. The different zone pressures coming from different ways. Guys got to be in their spots. Guys can't try to do too much. And sometimes when you get in the ball game facing an opponent like this, guys try to do a little bit extra to try to help a guy become, a little bit better, or try to help a guy over the top sometimes, and then you get out of position. But the number one thing is, like Z mentioned, you got to constrict that pocket. You can't allow him to get outside. You got to push on the inside and then corral him. Because if you do that, he won't have anywhere to go. Like I said, he's, not 6'4", 6'5". He won't be able to see over those guys. And if you constrict that pocket, there's nowhere to go. And you force the ball out, and you force him into some bad spots.
Do you guys feel if our defense is able to get some hits on Bryce Young, that could change the way the flow of the game goes? Now, certainly both teams will make adjustments over the course of the game, defensively and offensively, but we didn't touch the guy in the SEC championship. He had no fear of our defense, really, is the way I kind of look at it. If we can lay a lick on that guy and show him that we've got something a little more on defense, how does that affect his play as a quarterback, speaking to two guys who played the position?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you can hit a guy a couple times when he's stepping into a throw, or he feels like he's about to let it go and he gets hit, or right after he lets one go, he takes a little nudge from a guy and ends up going to the ground. That means a lot, because sometimes that lets a quarterback know they're close. And it's sometimes you start to feel as though I got to get this ball out just a little bit sooner because these guys are coming. So I think it's absolutely important that we hit it, even if it's not for sacks. Maybe it's pressures, maybe it's he's let the football go, you still get some licks on him. He will start to, in his brain, trust me, start to feel like this ball has to get out just a half a second sooner, because these guys are right on me, and that's a big deal. I say the other part of this is we can't allow the deep throws. We can't allow the big plays to happen. This is an offense that's lived off deep plays. You turn on any game that Alabama's played, they've had these deep shots. They've had these 30, 40, 50-yard plays. And I'm not sure if they don't have that in the ball game, or you take that away, are they good enough to just say, hey, we'll methodically go down the field? Will Bryce Young be patient enough to say, I'll take 3-4-yard completions as opposed to 30, 40-yard completions? If we can keep that under wraps, there's a good chance that we probably can get after him and see if he's willing to be patient too.
Yeah, I completely agree. We want to speed up Bryce Young's clock, and you start hitting quarterbacks, their clock will absolutely speed up, and the timing of the offense will be disrupted, because it is a half a second on a play that can completely disrupt timing. So the more we get after him, the more we're disruptive. That will impact his play. And I think the other thing that we do as well, and I do think that we've got to have some safety help over the top. I don't think we can go put our cornerbacks on islands against these great Alabama receivers. That doesn't mean we can't come up and press and jam, get our hands on those receivers, again, to reroute them, disrupt their timing. If we can go do that and get them out of sequence and out of cadence a little bit, it'll greatly increase our chances to find success.
Alabama ran the ball well against Cincinnati in their Cotton Bowl playoff victory. How much does Georgia's defense have to be concerned about Alabama's running game?
So I think you're concerned about everything that Alabama does. But if you're Georgia, the one thing that you've been able to do game in and game out is shut down opposing teams' running games. And I think our front seven is absolutely strong enough to go shut down Alabama's running game. I think the strength of Alabama, as Shaq just mentioned, is their ability to go vertical and find big plays and really take over the momentum of football games. But I think that we can shut down Alabama with playing a variety of different looks, but really protecting against that vertical passing game. We're good enough up front with our front seven to shut them down and limit what they can do running the football.
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead.
I'm just going to add a little piece to that. I mean, you can't allow them to have both. At the end of the day, you can't let them have the run game and the pass game. You got to force them to be one-dimensional. And like Z mentioned, the run game is something that Georgia has always been really good at. Slowing them down, stopping them, that's been a big key to the season. But you can't allow them to have the run game with play action and everything else to go with it and be able to throw the football. That's a remedy for a bad day for any team, let alone Alabama and Georgia coming to this game. So you got to force them to be one-dimensional, and obviously they got the run game going. That makes it even tougher to stop the pass.
Let's touch on special teams for just a moment before we get out of here. And from the kicking standpoint, both teams have good punters. Both teams have good field goal kickers. The return game is not much of a factor anymore in college football, at least from a kickoff return perspective. Maybe every now and then you get a punt return, but how does special teams affect the outcome of this ball game on either side for Georgia or Alabama? Does anybody have an edge there?
So I think both teams are very good in their specialty teams units, and I do think it's pretty equal footing when you look at what Georgia brings to the table and what Alabama brings to the table. But this segment of the game is going to be critical. Maybe not in the return game, but when I look at Alabama and the success they've had, the number of non-offensive touchdowns that Alabama was able to go put on the board under Nick Saban is really remarkable. And so when I look at special teams, it really is just ensuring you do your job and don't lose it on special teams. Where you have a chance to go win football games here is getting a block kicked, is getting a scoop and score for a touchdown after a block punt, or they're blocking a field goal to change momentum in the game. But it's one of the things that I'll be looking for in this football game, because if it happens against you, it's very difficult to win. If it happens for you, boy, it greatly increases your chances. And both of these teams have got good enough athletes that in the punt return game, not necessarily return, but being able to get after the punter and block some kicks, or do that with your field goal, extra point block, field goal block. We've got schemes and we've got talent that can go get after anybody that we play. I think that's going to be one of the keys of the game. Do you see that pop up anywhere?
And I'll just add something to that. The hidden yards in the ball game, I think, are going to be critical. You talk about in the punt game, who can be able to flip the field. That's going to be a big part of the ball game, because you get one series where you get a shank or a guy doesn't hit it like he wants to, or, you're backed up, your own end zone, and you only get a, 20, 30-yard kick, and then now they get great field position. Those are going to be critical times, because that really just adds a possession to that team and makes it even easier to go down and get points. So I think the hidden yards, who can flip the field, who can, kick it high and force fair catches so they don't, go for another 10 yards and pick up a first down before they even get the football, stuff like that. I think it'll be a critical part of this ball game if both punters can be on their games and really flip the field for their team and give their offense or defense a better chance at scoring points.
And guys, as we know, both of these head coaches are big believers in putting the best guys on the field, and that includes special teams. I mean, in the SEC championship, we saw Jamison Williams as, I think, one of the gunners on the punt unit, and that's some speed out there to get down the field and cover punts. And Georgia does the same thing. I mean, we have some of our better defensive guys on these units, and one single play on a specialty unit could really sway the outcome of this game.
And that's why you want your best players on it. I mean, I think both these coaches know the importance of special teams, and from day one, they instill it in their guys. Like, first off, all these guys want to go to the next level and play the National Football League. And I guarantee you, the first thing they tell them is, you want to make it to that next level, you have to be on special teams. You have to be good on special teams. You have to go and show that you're willing to play special teams. And all these guys know, hey, if I want to go to the next level, or if I want to be an impact player for my team, then sometimes I'm gonna have to run down there on a kick. I'm gonna have to run down there on a punt and make a play. And I think both teams and both coaches have stressed that we need our best players on the field at all times. And it's not just on offense or defense. We need the best 11 at all times to go down and win these ball games on each phase of the game.
Boy, it's the benefit of recruiting all these 4- and 5-star guys for both of these teams. All year long, Georgia, where the specialty team units have been on the field, our special teams guys are superior athletes to what we're competing against. Same thing with Alabama. It is one of the great luxuries you have when you've got the top 1, 2, or 3 recruiting classes year after year after year, is that your reserves are tremendous athletes. So when those guys get on the field, there's no drop off in talent at all. It is, you've got elite talent on offense, elite talent on defense, and elite talent throughout every specialty teams unit. And it's going to be a fun battle to watch again.
If in most cases the quarterback is the best player on the field, and you want the best players on your special teams units, why isn't the quarterback ever on special teams?
It's crazy. I don't know. I mean, I've asked to be on there a bunch of times and never will let me go on. So I don't know. Z, I mean,
you want your best athletes on the field. Quarterbacks, you may have been shocked. No athleticism here. That's for sure.
You guys could be holders, hold on the extra points.
Z,
we can't catch either. All we can do is throw.
Z, I seen you on some naked bootlegs now. You can turn the corner now, so you athletic now.
That's because I was scared. There's zero athleticism there. I didn't want to get hit.
All right, guys, we're all looking forward to this. Monday night, Indianapolis, Indiana, Lucas Oil Stadium. My first trip there, so I'm looking forward to that. We'll all be there for the radio network, and our broadcast starts at 4 p.m. Monday afternoon. Kickoff will be shortly after 8 o'clock, I would imagine, with the TV post-game or pre-game show. So probably around an 8:15 or an 8:20 kick. I'm not sure at this exact moment, but it'll be a fun night in Indianapolis on Monday for the national championship of college football. We're certainly honored to be there, and I'm honored to be there with these guys here as well. So we hope you can join us Monday night for the national championship, Georgia and Alabama. Thanks for being with us here for a few minutes, and go Dogs.
Go Dogs.